In 10 years, this world ends not metaphorically, not slowly, but violently as the Federation Kingdom collapses, the nobles are slaughtered, and everything burns because of 5 people known as the 5 great sins: wrath, greed, sloth, pride, and obsession. And the man who knows all of this is not a hero, not a chosen one, but a 78-hour-per-week wage slave, who suddenly wakes up as a noble in a fantasy world. Alan does not panic immediately, because the bed is too soft, the room is too expensive, and the servants bow like he owns the place, until he tries to read and realizes he cannot understand a single word, no system, no translation, no cheat, just pure illiteracy. While he questions, the butler watches silently, because the young master is holding the book upside down. Alan's first conclusion is painfully accurate. He has no powers, no talent, and no special ability, making him a useless fantasy protagonist. But before despair fully kicks in, a mountain of food arrives: meat, bread, sweets stacked like a boss fight, and his thoughts reduce to a single word: good, as he eats until he is full for the first time in years. And at that moment, nothing else matters. Then reality escalates again, when a maid politely asks if he is finished, and another offers to help him bathe, which turns out to mean a massive luxury bathtub, and 2 servants scrubbing and massaging him at the same time, causing Alan to mentally disconnect. Because if this is hell, it is extremely comfortable. That illusion shatters when a servant casually mentions that the other young masters are returning tomorrow, and Alan freezes. Because other young masters means family, so he asks who they are, and the servant looks at him like he just forgot his own name, and answers Leo and Antonio before asking why he speaks as if he does not know his own family. That single sentence hits him harder than any spell, so Alan submerges his face into the bath, because this is too stupid to be real. And in that moment, the truth slams into him: this world is psychedelia, the dark fantasy RPG he used to play, where the ending never changes. The 5 great sins awaken, the kingdom collapses, and the nobles die. And the very first noble family to be completely annihilated is the Palladio family, his family. Leo, the prostitution king; Antonio, the drug king; and a third son who dies quietly without meaning, Alan Palladio himself. He collapses, soaked, shaking, and furious, because in the game this family was a tutorial tragedy, easy experience points. But in reality, he is living inside it, and luxury means nothing when you have a 10-year death timer. So absurdly, he wishes to return to being a wage slave, because at least that life did not come with a confirmed execution date. He spirals, complains, and pities himself until something changes, because Alan realizes something terrifying. He knows the future, every disaster, every trigger, every sin, which means this is no longer a tragedy, but leverage. So why wait 10 years to die when he can remove the cause and stop the 5 great sins before they awaken, not to save the world, not to be a hero, but to protect his peaceful, noble life? That is when Alan decides he will reform the 5 great sins while they are still children. 2 months later, his knight Evan reports success. The human testing facility is destroyed, the children are rescued, an orphanage is established, and its management is entrusted to a girl named Yusa. And Alan praises Evan with forced confidence, even though Evan cannot tell if it is sarcasm or approval, while Alan realizes his facial expressions are completely broken. Evan is blunt, loyal, and honest, one of the few good people in this world, and Alan recruited him the moment he recognized him from the game, and Evan confirms the real target was Yusa before hesitating and admitting she is not normal, because when he saw her locked in a cell, she was emitting a deep red aura strong enough to terrify mercenaries, and he does not understand why she never escaped. Evan asks why Alan did not bring her home, and Alan agrees out loud, but internally knows the truth, because Yusa Ludia is destined to become Wrath, a non-human, who will one day contract an otherworldly being and massacre hundreds of thousands, but only after years of suffering, so no suffering means no awakening. Alan leaves her in peace and tells Evan it is not time yet, a phrase that alone shocks him, then orders secrecy, continuous funding, and hands Evan a letter claiming it is reassurance, when in reality the letter contains 3 phrases ripped directly from the game trigger words: lore, Locked spells dialogue hooks that Alan believes will stabilize her. When Yusa reads the letter, the mana in the room explodes, and she asks why Alan does not want her by his side, forcing Evan to repeat the words, "It is not time yet." And instantly she calms down, clutching the letter like scripture, smiling softly. A subtle, terrifying smile, the smile of wrath. Miles away, Alan lies on the floor, completely unaware that his reassurance letter has been interpreted as divine prophecy. The next morning begins violently when a pile of books from his own library falls on his head before Evan bursts in, announcing that the second child has been rescued from an illegal slave market, causing Alan to immediately ask with genuine concern whether the child was treated kindly, which Evan confirms without hesitation. Before anything else can be discussed, the door explodes open and Antonio, the second son, enters, mocking Alan for studying and placing his elbow on Alan's head like a piece of furniture, demanding a response. And while every instinct tells Alan to fight back, he shocks everyone, including himself, by kneeling, immediately bowing his head and submitting, completely choosing survival over pride. Evan, watching, realizes Alan understands the hierarchy perfectly. That submission lasts exactly 1 second before a dagger flies past Antonio's face, and Leo, the eldest son, appears, telling them to be quiet and ordering Antonio to leave with polite murderous intent, pressing a dagger against his neck, and insulting him for being weak against drugs, which prompts Alan to roll away, instantly dragging Evan with him as he escapes. Only then does Alan realize the truth. The Palladio brothers are not minor villains like in the game. They are real underworld rulers fighting over the family, and provoking either of them guarantees death. So his only plan is to remain weak, useless, and invisible. An explosion erupts behind them, confirming the brothers have begun fighting, and Alan collapses into his room exhausted, where Evan casually drops another terrifying detail. The second rescued child is also abnormal. Alan freezes. That child is Duce, the future sin of Sloth. In the game, Sloth was not lazy, he was methodical, cruel, and repaid every injustice tenfold. And Alan vividly remembers the purple mana tearing bodies apart, which makes his hands tremble as he repeats the excuse, "It is not time yet," and sends Duce to the orphanage. He even writes casual complaints in his letter to Yusa, joking about being used as a chair to build familiarity, and warns her to take care of a sick child. At the orphanage, Yusa meets Duce, immediately recognizes the marks of abuse, declares that the black goat was responsible, and proclaims that the great moon has chosen him in his broken state, promising revenge if he devotes himself completely to Alan, as mana surges violently from both of them, until Yusa notices Alan's letter and calms down, deciding she should reply first. The next day, Evan bursts into Alan's room, screaming that something terrible has happened. Duce is dead. Alan can only stare in disbelief, because the sin of Sloth has died far too early, and the funeral that follows is absolute madness. Women complain about hunger, drugs are everywhere, and the Palladio family proves itself completely insane, even in grief. As Alan studies Duce's body, he notices something off and catches Leo smiling like he just won the lottery, realizing this death was no accident and was likely ordered by Leo himself. A year passes. The family stabilizes, Leo divorces, the drug trade quiets down, and Alan becomes a pen pal with Yusa, convinced this growing familiarity is part of his plan, as her letters describe happy children playing games, growing well, and putting on puppet shows, which convinces Alan that everything is finally working. Then a servant reports a clue regarding the third boss, and Alan relaxes, believing peace has arrived. The scene cuts. A drug distribution site erupts in chaos as criminals are forced to kill themselves, screaming that their bodies are moving on their own, and a cloaked girl arrives, praising the puppet show, revealing that these massacres are the performances mentioned in the letters. Duce is alive. He never died. He confirms that these killings are preparation for the place where Alan will return, because it cannot be shabby when he arrives. And as they fly away, they leave behind the symbol of the blue moon. Time accelerates unnaturally, 2 years vanish, and Evan returns exhausted to report the final child has been safely delivered to the orphanage, completing the set of future world enders. Alan insists he is smiling and attempts to move his face, resulting in a barely noticeable twitch, which only makes Evan suggest that he simply say it instead. And Alan relaxes, admitting that things have gone far better than expected. He reflects that the bosses of psychedelia only became the 5 great sins because of extreme trauma and horrific pasts, and that preventing those tragedies early had a very low probability of success, which means the fact that everything seems stable now is almost unbelievable. Alan asks for an update on the orphanage, and Evan hands him Yusa's latest letter explaining that the children who once resembled broken dolls are now bright, healthy, and growing normally, which genuinely surprises Alan, who realizes he does not even need to hire a caretaker, and silently praises Yusa for managing the orphanage so well despite her personality being completely unsuited for it. Alan openly admits that Yusa is a good kid in her own strange way, and Evan asks if the letter contains anything important, to which Alan summarizes that everyone is healthy, some children are growing especially fast. Alan feels genuine relief, believing that all 5 future sins are now developing normally, which confirms his belief that environment determines destiny, until Evan moves closer and asks the question Alan has been avoiding: when exactly he plans to meet the children in person. Alan panics internally because he has no intention of ever seeing them face to face, since their original transformations were so grotesque that even the game's flashbacks terrified him as a player. And while he hopes they are better now, the thought still scares him, so he avoids eye contact and mutters a vague answer, maybe in 5 years, which Evan accepts without question. Alan concludes that his only remaining goal is to gain just enough personal power to protect himself from whatever consequences his interference may cause, and begins practicing magic, convinced that talent matters, and this body fortunately has it. While watching, Evan casually asks if Alan has heard of the Blue Moon, and Alan dismisses it as some vigilante group hunting criminals that probably disappears later, because it was never in the game, until Evan adds that Blue Moon also kills nobles, which immediately terrifies Alan and causes him to stop practicing and order Evan to sleep in the room next to his own. The scene cuts to the orphanage, where Yusa gathers the children and announces the weekly Blue Moon activity report, as Pride cheerfully describes executing slave traders, Greed calmly explains dissolving corpses, and Sloth confirms annihilating bioweapon labs and Avalon operatives without a trace. Yusa listens calmly and declares that everything is proceeding according to his will, reminding them that they exist only for the Great Moon. Then a problem arises, as Deuce reports that the head of Avalon is the eldest son of the Palladio family, and that Leo is actively targeting Alan, which triggers an explosive reaction, as Yusa's aura floods the room with terror before she regains composure and orders that once the Count dies, Leo is to be quietly eliminated with poison. 2 years later, the Count dies officially from a heart attack, though Alan knows better. And during the funeral, rumors spread that Blue Moon attacked again, frightening the populace far more than he expected, as he and Evan quietly leave the ceremony unnoticed by most, but carefully observed by someone else. Evan asks what Alan plans to do now that Leo will inherit, and Alan calmly tells him to pack, because they are leaving, not abandoning the territory, but relocating south to Rodmill, a remote village which Alan believes is the perfect safe zone. 3 days later, after briefly enjoying a peaceful meal, Alan is abruptly dragged back to the estate for another funeral, because Leo is dead, stabbed through the heart, and Alan cannot understand how or why his brother died so early, as knights refuse to meet his eyes and servants tremble when he speaks. When Alan asks what happened, no one answers, and Evan finally approaches, hesitantly asking the impossible question, whether Alan himself was the mastermind who eliminated Avalon overnight, causing Alan to look around and realize that everyone now believes the useless third son is a terrifying shadow ruler. With no other way out, Alan quietly answers yes, and in his own mind commits fully to his final escape plan, Rodmill, the place where he will hide, save the 5 great sins, and somehow stop the world from ending, even if it sounds like the delusion of a man who has started believing his own legend. As Alan prepares to leave, Leo watches from a distance, debating whether killing his useless little brother is even worth the effort, because he had already planned to poison him eventually. And now that Alan is leaving quietly, there is no reason to act yet. Despite this, Leo still orders one of his men named Almond to follow the carriage. Almond hesitates and asks if Leo wants Alan killed, which shocks Leo, because Almond has never questioned orders before, and the sudden hesitation irritates him further when he notices Evan nearby gripping his sword, making the tension unbearable. So Leo snaps and orders Almond to do exactly what he was told. Before Leo can say anything else, Almond draws his sword and stabs him straight through the chest. The betrayal is so sudden, it almost feels unreal, as Leo collapses, screaming, demanding to know how Almond dared betray him, only for Almond to smile coldly and admit that pretending to be loyal had been fun, before revealing his true identity as a member of the Blue Moon trained by the Red Moon. Since Blue Moon is the sword of that man, Almond explains, acting according to his will is natural, and anyone who threatens the Great Moon must be erased. Then he twists the blade deeper, rips it out, and leaves Leo screaming as he bleeds to death, mocking him for taking 2 whole years to finally reach this moment. Leo swears his men will hunt Almond down, but Almond calmly replies that Avalon has already been erased and vanishes into the night. The next morning, Alan wakes up in Rodmill, stretching lazily, convinced he has finally reached paradise, waking when he wants, eating when he wants, living the quiet, noble life he dreamed of, until Yuan enters holding a letter. Alan barely looks at it until he reads the contents and freezes, because Leo is dead, and his free trial of heaven lasted exactly 4 days. Yuan leans in, whispering the most terrifying sentence imaginable, asking when Alan became the shadow leader, and why he never mentioned it, causing Alan to collapse, panic spiraling, as he mutters that nothing makes sense anymore. Yuan calmly explains the problem: Leo died after Alan left. Alan has a perfect alibi, and no one stands in his way, which means everyone believes Alan orchestrated everything, the shadow leader, the assassin of the swordmaster, the hidden ruler. Alan tries to reason it out, saying no organization could erase Avalon overnight, before remembering there is one group that hunts organizations, Blue Moon. But Yuan shuts that down immediately, explaining that Blue Moon always leaves their mark, and this time there was none, only clean sword wounds. Alan connects the dots and whispers that the road to hell has opened, realizing that this is exactly why he is being labeled the shadow leader. He insists Blue Moon cannot be responsible because they never even existed in the original game, which only makes the situation worse. The scene cuts to Blue Moon headquarters, where Yusa casually asks if any trace was left, and is reassured that nothing remains except a single leaf. More members arrive, reporting that nearly 500 Avalon soldiers remain, and another cheerfully admits cutting them apart piece by piece, as Yusa's bloodlust leaks into the room, and she quietly declares perfection. Avalon collapses completely in 15 days, but a problem remains when evidence surfaces showing nobles were involved, and Yusa's aura explodes, filling the room with killing intent. Orders are issued silently, efficiently, and absolutely. The information guild is sealed, the matter is personal, and nothing must ever reach that person's ears. When one member hesitates, Yusa strikes him without warning, reminding them that a sword must not think for itself, and that Blue Moon exists only to move according to his will, because he knows everything. The room freezes, no one dares breathe, as Yusa calmly warns them never to disappoint him. That night the moon shines brightly over the world. The scene shifts to Alan slumped over a desk buried under mountains of paperwork, his face pale, eyes lifeless from exhaustion, as he groans that he cannot take this anymore because a full month has passed since the funeral, and the work never stopped, and he collapses forward muttering that he is going insane. He slams his hands on the table, furious, because Leo's death was supposed to happen 6 years later, and by dying early, the entire course of the game changed, dumping every responsibility onto him, as servants immediately flood the room with even more urgent documents, causing Alan to freeze mid-motion and sigh heavily. He snaps, asking why everyone suddenly works so hard when they used to slack off under the count, only to realize the staff is terrified, whispering that the young master is angry, and that they must work harder or die, confirming Alan's worst fear that the rumor of him being a hidden mastermind has fully taken root. Alan breaks, slamming his pen down, shouting that he is not some terrifying monster. He is just a former wage slave who wants to do his job, quietly wishing desperately that people would stop overreacting and handle things themselves. Outside, Yuan grills meat, humming casually, and remarks that it is astonishing Alan reached the second tier of poison craft in only 2 years, something most people take 4 years to accomplish, praising his talent as Alan listens blankly and admits his talent is decent while thinking bitterly that he only learned magic for self-defense. He conjures a faint glow of mana, watching it flicker and fade, admitting quietly that he has tried every type of magic, but his mana pool is too small, thinning faster with every use, and that no amount of training can change that because innate mana capacity is like a natural weight class, and his is simply too low. Tears form as he mutters that nothing is working, and he is only trying to survive. While eating barbecue, Yuan casually hands him a letter, his invitation to a noble exchange ball, forcing Alan to sigh, wondering why he must attend something so pointless. The scene shifts to a luxurious party where Alan and Yuan wear formal attire, but Alan looks exhausted as he reminds himself that networking is necessary for survival, even though he hates it, while Yuan ignores him entirely, enjoying the food. Alan forces himself to socialize, complimenting wine, attempting a practiced smile, but his expression terrifies a noblewoman who runs away screaming that she will tell her father, causing Alan to spiral into despair, realizing people believe he is extorting rare wine through intimidation. Yuan laughs it off, explaining Alan's loot reputation has grown again, and wine as Alan sinks further, realizing his social life is completely destroyed, and that nobles now avoid him entirely. Seeking air, Alan steps onto the balcony under moonlight, questioning where everything went wrong when a gentle voice interrupts, and a girl introduces herself as Laura, the third daughter of Duke, instantly triggering Alan's alarm, because the Eli family is one of the 3 major shadow players and notorious northern troublemakers. Laura bluntly begs for help, revealing she is about to be assassinated by her own sister, explaining she survived only because she was a mistress's child and now offers half her family fortune in exchange for protection, which makes Alan realize she must have died early in the original timeline since he does not remember her at all. After a long silence, Alan refuses, gently bowing and explaining he cannot help because he can barely protect himself and does not want to give her false hope, even wishing her luck and urging her to find a reliable ally before leaving her behind. From the shadows, Rhina calmly reports Laura's approach to the Great Moon and receives confirmation that Laura is not tied to Avalon and therefore not a target, ordering all information blocked so nothing reaches him, and the Avalon case remains sealed. Later that night at the party, Alan leans against a wall, rubbing his temple, muttering why misfortune seems to orbit him like a curse, when a light melodic voice greets him, and he looks up to see a red-haired woman smiling effortlessly, making him freeze. Because, for once, someone is actually talking to him. He forces a polite smile, recognizing her immediately as Lady Zeniona, and her amused reaction confirms his fear, because she is famous in the worst possible ways, and in his mind the realization locks in: she is one of the three great shadow players. Alan recalls the underworld hierarchy: Alida of the North, Pelotonia of the East, and Genea of the West, and as he studies her movements, he understands she belongs to the West, the one that does not destroy enemies, but absorbs them. Zeniona teases him effortlessly, and Alan responds with flawless noble etiquette, while internally screaming that he must never get involved with someone like her, because all he wants are just enough connections to survive quietly. She leans closer, inviting further conversation, and Alan bows politely, inventing an excuse about too many eyes on them, silently begging to be released, and her parting words chill him as she promises they will meet again, confirming that the predators have noticed him. From the shadows, two figures observe, confirming the Avalon case is sealed, but nodding someone else is still watching Alan wearing the mask of talent before disappearing into the dark. The next morning, Alan and Yuan stand before a massive canyon swallowed by unnatural darkness, even at midday, and Alan confirms this is the place he was searching for his real objective, the labyrinth of whispers. He explains that clearing all 8 rooms grants a powerful artifact, and casually admits he memorized every route from the game, shocking Yuan, as the entrance reacts to Alan's touch, revealing living stone walls breathing with mana. Inside, shadows crawl, monsters lurk, and Yuan warns that a single mistake will mean death, but Alan moves with eerie calm, solving the mechanisms, as if he has walked this path countless times before. The doors grind open, revealing grotesque carvings, so disturbing Alan turns away, fighting the urge to vomit as they enter the treasure chamber filled with ancient relics, and his eyes lock onto a single black ring, pulsing faintly with dark light. Alan orders Yuan to take only the ring, dismissing every other treasure as trouble, and confirms its identity, the oath of restraint, finally easing the pressure crushing his chest. The relief lasts seconds. The ground shatters, ancient golems rise from the canyon walls, mana cores blazing, and Yuan shouts that this is the worst possible outcome, pushing Alan back and telling him to run. Alan refuses, calmly stating that this time he will handle it, as the golems charge, shaking the cavern, and Yuan screams for him to save himself. Alan speaks one sentence, activating the ring. I evolve the oath of restraint. Reality distorts, light explodes, and the chamber is consumed by blinding power.
Subscribe and press the bell so you know what happens next.